Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Professor Sicre in Theater Arts, and I'm here to help moderate this incredible presentations that y'all are about to share. I'm so excited to see all of this work. I'm so excited to see your mentor here and a couple other mentors as well, and just to be able to engage in discourse with your artistry and your work and everything that you're bringing into the space. Just in case y'all wanted to know, I have concentration in painting and photography from, another lifetime. And so the visual arts are something they're very close to me. I chose to go towards the performing arts, but it's something that's really close to me and something I still am incredibly passionate about. And so I feel really honored to be in the space with all of you and to be able to share the space and moderate this conversation with all of you. And so with that said, I would love to start with Danica. And I have shared, everyone should have access to share their screens. And clearly we're going to go over time from the time schedules that I sent everyone, but I'll try to keep it so that we're at least moving in like 10-minute blocks so that we can have everyone. But again, thank you everyone for being in the space. And Danica, the space is yours.
Hi, let me pull that up really quickly. Okay, can you all see this? Wait.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So my project is titled Speak Up or Speak Up for Earth. And essentially it's a study of environmental protest posters, and they're presented in this historically significant style of 60s and 70s design. And my main goal with this is to inspire people to make changes in their lives by presenting these environmental issues in this design style that I mentioned before. And this design style is significant because it is when the modern environmental movement began, with Rachel Carson releasing Silent Spring and all these other things kind of serving as like a catalyst to many other things within the movement. And it's also one of my favorite styles to work in. I think it's really eye-catching, so I think it works really well for this topic. And the way that I am presenting these environmental issues is by redesigning protest posters. So here's an example of this. This is one that I made. And I wanted to redesign these posters because although protests are super important in their own way, I feel like they can be kind of overwhelming and things can get kind of lost like on their individual sense. So I wanted to be able to give these words their own space to breathe and give them a sort of different setting to be viewed and interacted with. And so this is one of the ones that I made. I start by sort of collaging these different ideas, photos together to serve as the focal point, and then I go in and add the words and warp them individually to fit around the design and make everything play together nicely. I feel like my project is very visual, so once they're completed, it will speak a lot for itself, but hopefully this background information is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Danica, I have some questions for you
Yeah.
that were sent to me. And so I think the first question will be, how will the production of these posters be executed?
So originally I was hoping to screen print them, and I still will. It's obviously a little different now that everything's online, but I hope to screen print them and be able to present them in some sort of public space. I know it won't really be a possibility at LMU, but I do plan on finding somewhere to showcase them.
I love it. My next question for you is, since exactly you just mentioned it, like, here at LMU, you might not be able to, but you have this amazing space called online. So how would you adapt this project to be exhibited online? Especially now, right? More than any other time. Like,
yeah. So actually all of the posters will be presented on a website digitally, and I wanted to include sort of interactive components to it, like GIFs or GIFs. I still don't know which one's correct. I know that's a whole other debate. Anyway, but I wanted to include that sort of dive into like what I can do with online. And I think it will also be helpful because I can provide other links to resources like all of the protest posters that it's based off of that you wouldn't really be able to get from just the gallery setting. So it's kind of a nice extra component.
Danica, this excites me so much because I'm in the process of developing an FYS course that looks at protest, activism, and the arts, right? And so it's like, this whole sort of combination, like, or, protest, social justice, and the arts. And I'm still getting that title down. And just seeing this is such a perfect example of that combination. You've got these protest posters and you're combining them to your own art and you're putting them together. So my next question for you is, what have you found interesting in researching environmental posters? What has it been? I mean, I remember going to this one exhibit, not exhibit, I was going to one protest, and I ended up taking photos of the posters because I was more fascinated with that than anything else. So I'm really curious as to, like, what have you found interesting and in this research of these specific posters, especially like through time?
I found it really interesting specifically for like the environmental posters that a lot of them are really young kids or even just like teenagers. And I feel like that's something that can be seen as like two ways, like especially with the young kids. For me, at least it pulls at my heartstrings and like that they care so much about something so young, but it also is saddening that they have to worry about something so young.
Mm.
And then there's other people that might see it, like they might not take it seriously because, oh, these young people, like, what do they know? Like, I've been here way, like, so I think that was just an interesting thing that I was thinking about. And that was something else that I wanted to do with these posters because it kind of isolates them from who is making it, which obviously who is making it is important, but it's just a different setting.
I love that you want to focus on the youth, and I think it'd be so interesting also for you as you continue examining this work visually to look at photographs of posters, right, from like the 60s, the 70s, and I would be really interested in seeing the progression of what is being said in those posters. Does it still remain the same or not, or has it changed? And to sort of think that. But Danica, thank you so much. This is really, really beautiful. I do have another question for you is, how does your image make and communicate your subject matter? And which sort of like visual metaphors work best in communicating these issues that you've chosen?
I guess I feel like it kind of depends on which poster I'm redesigning, but I do try to focus individually on each one and kind of figure out what might be the best way to communicate that. And it takes a long time going from one thing. I'm like, maybe that wasn't the best, and then redesigning that. And then so it becomes from one redesign of a poster to me redesigning my own posters then.
Yes.
So it's definitely a process, but I think it's worth it. So.
And Danica, one last question. How many posters have you designed so far?
I think there's about 8 so far.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this, and thank you so much for sharing your art. Incredibly inspirational and so appropriate that it's behind you as well. So thank you so much. um, any questions that anyone in the space would like to ask besides the ones that I just sort of threw out to everyone, threw out to Danica? Anyone in the space want to ask Danica a specific question? I want to open it up in case someone wants to dig. Nope, we're good. Let's see. Oh, we have a raised hand. Yes, I love raised hands. Yes. Am I pronouncing it correctly, Kai?
Yeah, that's right. I was wondering, is there I don't know how to say it, but an ethical concern about, I don't know if ethical is correct, but sort of taking something that was made in a more sort of like in the moment. And do you think that you're losing authenticity when you take it and redo it in this very professional, design conscious style? Do you think that there's anything lost there, or do you think that, or are you not? I don't know. I'm kind of curious what you think of that.
I see what you're saying. I think it definitely it could have that effect, but I just see it sort of as a different way to present it, not necessarily less authentic, but just different, honestly. I don't know how else to, but I see what you're saying there.
I mean, think about all the artists that exist, contemporary pop artists specifically, right? That have grabbed other people's art and have made their version of the art. This is one artist, I cannot remember their name right now, but he went on Instagram and, captured photographs of people's Instagrams and wrote a comments, blew them up, and had a whole exhibit and sold each one of these individual photographs of someone put in their own Instagram, and was charging like $100,000, and people were buying them, right? And these were actually people's own Instagram photographs, and he just, captured it with his comments below, and sold them for tons of money. So art, the different things that that people are bringing to the space and to all of this. I love all of these things. Thank you so much, Danica. And I think that we'll continue exploring, as Dean Alexander said, sort of like the question of authenticity, right? And like about intentionally linked with protest and activism. Also, I think it's really interesting to bring up and think about at the same space. So Danica, thank you so much. Let's see. Wow, where's my little list? And we have Emmerson. Emmerson, you are next.
Hi.
And so space is yours, Emmerson.
Thank you. Okay. Can everyone see this all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So hi, to those of you I don't know, my name's Emmerson, and this is Awearness, an app idea that I created as a consumer for consumers to spread awareness about the ramifications that our consumption has on the world. When first starting this project, I thought of how we might change the mindset of overconsumption in consumers. And from there, I realized that spreading awareness of overconsumption would cease or decrease if consumers were exposed to the effects of fast fashion pollution on the world, along with how these brands in themselves are implicated in the violation and destruction of the environment and others. So sort of like a social responsibility that we all kind of share. Especially because I think it's true that oftentimes we don't know where or by who our clothing is made. And usually if the problem isn't right in front of us, we don't think it exists. There's actually a film that inspired a lot of my thesis called The Story of Stuff by Annie Leonard. And the film discusses the 5 steps of how products live out their life, starting with extraction of materials and ending with their inevitable disposal. This process is not a linear one, but a cycle for which our planet does not have infinite resources to support, and at a rate where we are creating and disposing more than we know what to do with. So here, I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see better. Is a model inspired by the 5 steps in The Story of Stuff, with my Awearness app at the center as a proposed solution and means of making people aware of the steps involved when purchasing products. Since most people think that their role is just in consumption and disposal, but when we actually consume goods, we are supporting and partaking in the other 3 steps that are before, being extraction, production, and distribution. So I believe that with knowledge comes power, and that's kind of where my app design comes into play. So my goal was to create a user-friendly app that promotes education to who and what we're supporting when we purchase from certain companies. So basically how it would work would be the homepage, which is where you can scan or search brands and see how ethical a company is. Then down here, there's like a Learn tab where you can learn more about how fast fashion turns into fashion pollution. And then another page seeing where side-by-side sustainable brands along with fast fashion brands and how they compare. And then a personal account page where you can manage and keep track of brands you love along with brands that you wish to avoid supporting. And basically the idea behind this was that it's so easy to look something up on your phone, and we all have our phones on us like 24/7. So I feel the best way and easiest way in this digital age is to kind of engage with our audience in that retrospect through phones, through apps, and being able to spread awareness is so much easier now that we have the information at our fingertips. And that's kind of where I'm taking it right now with this wireframing. And yeah, thank you.
I love this. Thank you so much, Emmerson. Have you looked at the app called Boycott?
I have not.
So download it tonight. It's different than what you're doing. And I think that both your app and Boycott would work hand in hand really well. I use the Boycott app on my phone, and you scan in barcodes, and it sort of the people have give the information, whereas I think yours goes so much more into detail, and there's so much more awareness. The other one's more like a people joining together and letting people know, like, well, this is made here and this and that. But I think sort of the combination of like yours and this one could be really instrumental in the type of change that you are thinking. So I highly recommend that you look at it.
Yeah, I'll
I have a
check it
question
out.
for you. So
Yeah.
what was your personal interest in this topic? Why did you want to focus on this?
So my sophomore year of college, I ended up taking an environmental studies class where I was able to do a personal project on fashion pollution. And it really just kind of inspired me from there. And like, it sparked kind of this like social responsibility within myself that I realized that like we're all consumers, like we all have a responsibility to our planet and the workers that are working in like these horrible conditions, like in these like factories. And just kind of like wanting to be a more conscious consumer overall.
Which leads me to like, do you think the internet and apps have promoted the idea of consumer, of overconsumption in consumers?
I definitely think so. I mean, especially like with COVID and everything, there was like a huge spike in obviously like online orders, people being home and like on your phone, on your laptop more. And so I think that there was definitely a spike in people like ordering things on Amazon or ordering things on like Poshmark, Etsy, and like other places just because they wanted something to do because they had nothing to do.
Absolutely. I want to ask a question about your design. Like, what were there other variations? Because designing an app, like you have to, graphic design comes in, but your artistry comes in, and also like constant of colors, like all of these things. So, were there other variations to how you wanted to present this work, and how did you settle on this specific design?
Definitely. So basically it would look nothing like this in the beginning stages. I wanted to actually make posters out of recycled or reused like t-shirts that I had or that I would like buy from like Goodwill or something, and kind of make like environmental posters on that to spread awareness. But during one of like the class meetings in our thesis class, I was given kind of like the idea that I should create something that could live in a more virtual setting, considering we are in a virtual world right now, and that we wouldn't have like, I wouldn't have an actual like space to like present those posters. So the app was one of the ideas, and it turned my entire project around, renamed it and everything. And this is kind of like what it became and turned into.
I love it. I used to live in New York, and there was this exhibit, I just Googled it, I can't remember, which focused so much on what you're saying. And as I was thinking about that question, I'm like, yeah, we have to, there's been these sculptors that have been, gathering all this like fast fashion and placing it together and creating sculptures like mountains. It was at the updated World Trade Hub, and they had this massive, they must have had like almost 1,000 pieces of clothing just in the middle of the space to sort of, again, raise this awareness. But, during COVID, it's not like anyone was going there and seeing it.
Yeah.
And so to have this, and you're right, to have it in your hand when you go anywhere, and just, you're able to just scan it and have this consciousness of what's being purchased is so critical and so important. Just to sort of finalize, what do you want consumers and viewers of your thesis to take away from this presentation and possibly this app as well?
Definitely like what I was able to take away from my environmental studies class, like when doing this personal project, and just like realize that we all have like a certain responsibility to one another and to the planet, and that this is something that like we're all implicated in and we all play a role in. We're all daily consumers, like, and that's not something that's going to change. Like we're always going to be like consuming goods, buying new things, disposing of things. Like that's just not something that's going to change. And like that's why I think like I was saying, like with awareness, like with like knowledge comes power. And so we can make more like conscious decisions of like what we're buying, where we're buying from, who we're supporting. And that's what I want this app to kind of like bring forward to everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I'd love to open it up to everyone. If there is a question that anyone in the space would like to ask Emmerson of something that we might not have covered, I'd love to sort of open it up in case anyone does have a question specifically with, this design and this app. Yes, and is it Francesco?
Yes, it is. My question is, I'm curious to see if you see yourself pursuing this app in the future and maybe like really sending it to certain app developers and really getting it developed.
Definitely. It's definitely become more of like a passion project the more that I like kind of like immerse myself into this. And I would definitely be like interested in like sending it to actual companies. Like, I don't know how to code and I don't know like what the first step into actually making this a real thing. So I would definitely love to get other people involved who know how to do that and maybe see where that leads. But
you're at LMU. Let me tell you, you're at LMU. I'm pretty sure that there are students that are hungry for this kind of this kind of work and project-wise in the multiple different colleges within the university itself. And so thank you so much, Emmerson. I can't wait to see where this goes. I can't wait to like download it and put it on my phone so that I can use it next to the other app. So thank you so much. Francesco, it is your turn. I want to open the space up for you.
Hello. So I want to thank the Undergraduate Research Symposium and of course, Professor Sicre for allowing me to be here and for this opportunity. I'd also like to thank, I don't know if she's here, but Professor Anna Harrison, who was my instructor during this project for medieval religious thought and practice. And this will be a bit more of an extensive presentation than maybe some of the previous ones. There are multiple drawings and presentations. I will try to get through it as quickly as possible. Yes, so let's get started. My project is titled Catherine of Cleves, Reimagined for the 21st Century. All original artwork was produced by me. And what it is essentially taking the original illuminated manuscript of Catherine of Cleves from the Middle Ages, I believe somewhere between the 12th and 14th century when it was produced, which served to highlight prayers and litanies that were very popular during the Middle Ages in that time period, but taking what we've learned from those lessons and applying them into modern day, using modern day issues that are plaguing our society, of course, as they did back then, and of course, using the power of art to present these issues. So we will begin with the Monday Hours of the Dead. This depicts a war scene. As you can see, there are four main characters in the drawing. On the left, we can see a woman in a blue flowy dress and a veil, holding together her child. And what it is supposed to represent is that in the middle of a war, really the only thing we have left is hope. And the only thing we have left is the future. And that is what represents. The future and hope all lies within the future generations after a war scene, after a dramatic scene of war. In the background, of course, you can see a devastating landscape. You can see lots of animals that represent death, the black cat, the owl, the black crow. You can see petals of flowers, dying, wilting trees, of course, just to add on to the misery of the topic. You can see that there are rearranged flags in the back, which are supposed to represent the two sides of the conflict. Really, it's actually meant to show the futility that war can be, in the sense of there's one side fighting for one thing and another fighting for the same thing, for a different thing. And even though, of course, they present themselves as being either the savior or the antagonist, in whatever way, at the end of the day, when it comes to war, destruction is destruction, no matter who is creating the destruction. We also, of course, can see in this drawing a nurse who, her hospital in the background, that was a hospital. If you can see next to the nurse, in between the woman in the blue outfit, there is a writing in Arabic that says hospital. Of course, the Arabic is supposed to honor the lives lost to many tragedies that happen in a region as historically and as beautiful as the Middle East is unfortunately very familiar with the content of war and devastation and having to constantly rebuild itself. So of course that was my way of honoring that. And the nurse, she is wearing an outfit to represent that she is kind of alone in this. Her hospital was bombed out. She tried to save the man, but of course it was to no avail. And of course there is a man who is weeping for the loss of his of this other man, whom he had a very significant relationship with on a brotherly, friendly level, however one wishes to interpret it. And of course, there is the man is of course passed away, but the halo around him can symbolizes that he will see a more prosperous and peaceful life into the future that he could not unfortunately attain right now during his earthly life. Um, of course, there is a certain dichotomy present in this drawing between attempting to save a life while having to also bear the misery of war, and bear the brunt of that, which of course many people who are victims of this tragedy are all too familiar with. On the next one, we have the Tuesday Hours of the Holy Spirit. And this entire drawing is really meant to honor corporal acts of mercy, meaning things that you do, for lack of a better word, things that you do that benefit others at kind of that with little self-interest. No personal, you don't really gain much from it personally, other than the pleasure of having helped somebody who was less fortunate than you. In this woman, of course, she's recreating this scene of the La Pietà by Michelangelo, where she is cradling this man, this dying, emaciated figure. She's providing him bread, she's providing him water. She's providing him comfort. He is, of course, very weighed down physically by the ball and the chain, as we can see, but weighed down physically as well. If you notice, in his hands are a flask of pills, and that is really meant to represent the unfortunate event that in today's society that is really dominated by pills and by these things, can often at the end of the day, it ends up that the cure ends up being the sickness. And it really ends up being that a lot of people end up being dependent on the thing that was supposed to cure them in the first place. The drawing also presents, of course, a pile of grain in the bottom left corner, which is meant to say that the woman is attempting to provide him a sustainability, attempting to provide him a way to get better, not just temporarily with water and bread, but to feed him. Kind of the saying of, teach a man to fish, you can feed him for a lifetime. That is her attempt at trying in her way to not just provide simple remedies, which I believe that that in today's pharmaceutical lobbying society, it tends to want to provide temporary relief to people rather than long-term care. And of course, the overall message really is that even though we have all of this medication, it does not mean, and of course that we do not legalize certain drugs. It does not necessarily mean that all drugs are necessarily illegal. Sure, drugs like cocaine may be illegal, but repackaged and called Adderall, then suddenly they become legal. So of course that is to show the unfortunate reality that is with a lot of people suffering in today's opioid crisis, in today's epidemic of pills. The Wednesday Hours of All Saints, this is meant to be really a tribute to all those who feel lost. The figure on the left is the patron saint of lost causes, St. Jude. And he is giving a warm embrace, empathy, and love to those who feel lost. And I think that this is a very appropriate image for a lot of people who are coming of age. In today's society, in the 2020s, it's not very easy to be a young adult. There's a lot of pressure to want to fit in a certain way, that can also be made excessive by social media. So of course, this is causing a lot of an epidemic of depression and anxiety in our among people today. So that is, of course, embolizing the woman who's wearing dark purple. She has a coffin around her necklace. She has the sword through the heart, piercing through it, meaning that she holds pain very close to her. She is in a dark cloud. And so the idea is, of course, the attempt that we should all find are the spirit of St. Jude within us, through these feelings of anxiousness and uncertainty that we feel living in today's modern society. Thursday Hours of the Blessed Sacrament is possibly the more complex drawing, but I will try to, again, make it very quickly, of course. This was inspired by the Miracles of the Eucharist by Cæsarius Hoisterback, specifically by one of the drawings in it, which told of a tale of a woman who used the Eucharist to make a vegetable garden and was then punished for it. And of course, to me, reading that, it felt like an early criticism of capitalism, which is odd considering that it was written far before the capitalism was created. So the notion of what this drawing is supposed to bring is, of course, the plague of exploitation that is in today's society, how we exploit ourselves, our resources, our faith, anything that we can sell, we sell it. And of course, that, I believe, is a very toxic mindset and a very toxic thing to be in, for lack of a better word. So in this drawing, we're seeing a woman who used the power of the Eucharist, which is in her hand. As you can see, it's the yellow sun-looking thing at the bottom, to very similarly plant a bunch of apples and to create her apple empire. As you can see, she has through this, she sells crates and crates of her products to the USA, to India, the Congo, but to all these other countries. She's making piles of money, as we can see in the bottom of the drawing. She has an entire Apple fortune, where she can buy a nice car that we see in the background and a huge mansion, and she's exploiting her resources. And of course, this is all, the purpose of this is that the negative part of this comes from the fact that now she becomes wholly and entirely committed to just money, to just an object. She doesn't commit to her own faith. She doesn't commit to bettering herself as a person, which is the original intention of using the Eucharist, of faith. The point is to really better ourselves as people, but she's using it to better a superficial version of herself, very superfluous things, to buy herself very nice outfits and big mansions. So like it said, much of her wealth is stored in superficial items. However, of course, messing with the Eucharist is only going to get you so far. And so, of course, she's punished by this devilish looking red figure, who is grabbing her and bringing her down. And I think that the idea behind this is really not necessarily to say that all people who partake in capitalism are going to burn in hell. We're not that isn't the intention, but it's rather to say that at the end of the day, you spend so much time on these very finite things. Money at the end of the day is a very finite thing. At the end of the day, there's nothing left. You don't leave a legacy. You don't leave anything except for materials, which are very, temporary items, and it all will come to an end one day. And so what is left after that? What is left after all this materialism that we've consumed? When we enter this cycle of just always wanting more and more and more, and we're never satisfied by anything, where do we go from there? So, so I just wanted to have a few notes on what I wanted to say. So yes, of course, this is a call to incorporate more of humanity within one's life. Friday Hours of the Compassion of Christ is one of my favorites of the drawings that I made, because it's a very much more optimistic drawing. The idea is to show this woman who has passed away through the white rose, and she's passing on to heaven. And in the back, we have Jesus, of course, comforting her and wearing pink, which is the color of compassion and warmth. Essentially telling her that, like, look, you got, like, patting her on the back and saying, look, you got this. I fully support you in your quest to go up to the kingdom of heaven. The woman defines what one would have historically considered a holy woman that got into heaven. We know that for centuries there has been a certain stereotype as to what a good, pure woman who goes to heaven looks like. And of course, she challenges a lot of that stereotype. She's very flashy, just in her outfits. She wears she wears a red, which is a color that's very associated with passion and arousal and all of this. And she wears lots of jewelry. She is not what one would historically, or as the many religious texts will tell us, does not deserve to be in heaven. But the idea is that, of course, if we're trying to bring this into modern times, what we're trying to say is that, this woman is not necessarily going up to heaven, or it's not necessarily that Jesus is welcoming her in a sense to anoint her of her sins, or that she is in somehow need of she is not a woman who is in need of redemption. She is just a woman who was mistreated by a society that views women as objects, views sex as commercial. So the idea is rather to offer her the protection and the respect in the kingdom of heaven that she was unfortunately not given on earth by us, by individuals, by people. Compassion in this case is really redefining it. It is not anointing of sins. It is not saying, we're going to forgive you for being a bad person. That is not at all what compassion should be. Compassion should be that we, forgive the fact that you had to endure so many earthly traumas and mistreatments, and that compassion is welcoming her into a more peaceful state of mind and a more peaceful environment. Saturday Hours of the Virgin is a very simplistic drawing because the idea is really just to promote motherhood and to promote affection. It is really a message that is just as important in medieval time as it is during the industrial age, as it is during the both world wars, when people were in dire need of some compassion, of affection, of being held, like this child is being held by the woman. Below that, we see a text called Salus in Arduis, which in Latin means stronghold in difficulties, or strength through hard times. And that is what the Virgin Mary really represents to many people of the Christian faith, and continues to represent. And I believe a lot of women have had to be strong during very difficult times. And I think that is what the Virgin Mary really represents. And it is especially important that we place an emphasis on motherly affection, and affection in general in a very post-industrial, fast-paced life that we live in nowadays. And finally, we come to the Sunday Hours of the Trinity. This is really dedicated to those who we have lost in the past year due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. As you can see, this person, her spirit is their spirit, is being carried into the dove on top, that is being carried up into heaven and lifted through the dove of peace. God is watching over all of this as this is happening to take care of all those who have been lost and mistreated by our society, who does not respect frontline workers, for a society that doesn't respect rules and respect really the severity of this ongoing pandemic. Healthcare workers, I believe, take up a very sacred duty. And this is sometimes the cross that they bear, that unfortunately in their attempt to save everyone else, they end up harming themselves and falling victim to the very thing that they were supposed to protect us from, which of course is very unfortunate. And it is just to show that we need to value our health. We should be valuing our healthcare workers far more than we already do. And overall, what can we take away from this project? The messages, what I attempted to show through this art form, through this project, was that the messages that we find in medieval literature actually possess a quality to them that is unbounded by time, a quality that it can be just as applicable in the medieval ages as it can be now. And that's crazy to think, because we associate the medieval ages with times of being very archaic. We may even associate the current institutional organized religion as being archaic. And recent comments made by the Pope and by the Catholic Church would, of course, seem to confirm that it remains a very archaic institution. However, I believe that faith itself is not archaic, and I believe that spirituality itself is not something of the past, and it still has a place. And a lot of the messages that can be found through religious texts, through ancient religious texts, can still be carried out and still be applicable to today. And as a matter of fact, a lot of them are very important that we return to and keep in mind in this modern 21st century. It can be used as a weapon to directly tackling existing societal issues. And I think it should be, and I believe that we should be evaluating that even more. So that was my spiel. That was very long, so I hope I wasn't blabbering on for too long. But thank you so much for your time and for this opportunity. And so yeah, I'll leave it back to Professor Sicre then.
Thank you. I'm not going to open up for questions because it did carry over more than the time allotted. But thank you so much. I mean, I think you explained yourself so vividly that if we do have questions, we can place them in the chat. But thank you so much for sharing your work. That was really beautiful to see these pieces and to see your reimagining of them. Our next presenter is going to be Juliane. Juliane, am I saying that correct?
Juliane.
Juliane? Okay.
Yes.
Juliane. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Juliane, and for my thesis project, I have been building a skateboard company called Deck Flip, which is an eco-friendly brand that has an initiative to stop maple deforestation. And I first got this idea when I was doing my research, and I found out that skateboard manufacturing is actually one of the biggest contributors to maple deforestation in North America. And this is mainly due to the high demand for maple skateboards, since they do perform the best. And what I wanted to do was offer a sustainable skateboard by reusing and upcycling used or damaged boards. On the right here, I have a diagram of how I kind of do that in relation to standard skateboard production. So first, extraction happens, where maple trees are cut down, and those resources are transported to the manufacturers for production. And in my research, I came across a manufacturer in Illinois who produce hundreds of skateboards a day and also end up producing a lot of unused boards that are considered scraps or would have ended up in landfills. So my company purchases these boards and we actually turn them into art pieces or upcycle them and turn them into skateboards. Down here, I have some boards featured, as well as the digital marketing that I've done on my website and Instagram. I handcraft and paint all these boards myself and really take pride in crafting a product that I'm proud of and is of high quality. So if anyone wants to see any more skateboards, you can follow me on Instagram. My user is deck_flip, or you could visit my website at deckflip.shop. I would really love the support. I'm a growing entrepreneur. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Wow, this is amazing. Please write your Instagram on the chat so that I can follow you. I love skateboarding. I have my own skateboard, longboard, and to see this is really exciting. What inspired you to start creating skateboard art? I mean, I'm sitting here being like, I had never thought about this, and I'm just blown away. And so I'd love to hear your inspiration behind this.
Yeah, I get a lot of my inspiration from my environment and nature. So I have a lot of plants and animals incorporated in the designs. I don't know if you can see, as well as a lot of geometric patterns that I'm drawn to. Some of these boards are commissioned, so the client will tell me exactly what they want, or I have the freedom to do what I want sometimes and be more creative. But yeah, I have this boho minimalist style kind of. Even if the board is commissioned, I try to stick to that style just so everything is cohesive. But I do get a lot of my inspiration from nature.
And why skateboards? I mean, you're making me go all the way back to my first skateboard, out of Mark Gonzalez, and I'm like, whatever happened to that board? I don't even know. And I would love to know, what made you decide to to, why skateboards?
Yeah, well, I have been a skateboarder for a while now, so I enjoy it myself, but I also think that as an art piece, it's a very interesting and unique canvas as opposed to a square or a rectangle. I'm working with this piece of beautiful wood that I get to paint on. So I just like working with the material.
Love this. My tattoo artist that has done a lot of the work that I have on my body, her shop has all these different skateboards, and every artist has their own, their own art on a skateboard. But this is just so beautiful too, and I'm just really moved by this. My next question is for you. Like, what are your next steps for this company, and what are your goals? What do you want to do with this? Have you launched it? I'm just really curious.
Yeah, so it is up on my website, but I still have a lot of room for growth, and I'm really excited about where I could take it. I would like to start featuring the boards at art fairs or flea markets, even like online exhibitions, or doing a partnership with other skateboard brands could be really cool, and get exposure about the project. So we'll hope for that.
Oh, this is so exciting. Wow. And you sort of kind of answers also this other question that I had. It's like, you answered like some of your inspiration for the artwork that you have, and what you want to keep doing with it. And I'm just really exciting. I do have a question though. What's been your favorite part of this project? Because I feel like it's compound. I feel like you have the skateboards and the design, you have the environmental issue, the reuse, of these pieces, the making them your own, the artwork that you're putting into the skateboards, and then your business. And then the artwork that you're putting into designing your business, being conceptually about your website, the app, your Instagram, and all of those things. So I'd love to know, what's been your favorite part of this project?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy every aspect of this project. The branding I really love to do, as well as the art that goes on the skateboards. But I think my favorite part was working on the actual boards, especially being on the computer all the time. It was really nice to get a break and be able to work on actual materials and use paint on the board. So I would say that that part this semester was really great.
I need to go to your website. This is amazing. Thank you so much. This is just really inspiring. And
Thank
you have a
you.
business. You have a business. This is, and I can see you at art festivals, skateboarding shows, skate
Yeah.
park. Once this pandemic eases itself, I can absolutely see you having a booth, and I definitely see you collaborating with artists. They're always looking for other artists. It's part of the beauty of art, in visual art. So this is, and commissions. I can't wait to keep getting, more and more commissions with this. I'd love to open it up if anyone in the audience has a question that they would like to ask. I would love for that. Any questions? Any questions? Scrolling through everyone's little, yes, Kai, please.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested. So scrolling through your boards, I noticed that, I hope that this is the right term. There's kind of like a mix of like indigenous versus more geometric art styles. And I'm kind of curious, how does the design of the site and the logo and everything, how does that synergize with the style of the boards?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's hard to make everything so cohesive when you have this branding and then a whole separate piece of art on the skateboard. But I generally stick with a like boho minimalist style, and I feel like that is kind of it kind of goes with my eco-friendly brand because I'm using a lot of neutral colors, geometric patterns. So, I'm still working on that part of the business and trying to make that cohesive, but I like that it's kind of different from the branding, that these art pieces kind of, stand for themselves and each one is unique. And it's not, so similar to my branding, and it's not repetitive.
I love that. let me tell you, I get the feeling of beach. I get the feeling of chill. The colors that you've chosen, right? The design of that gives me that chill beach vibes, just cruising feeling that can come with sort of like skateboarding culture. Like I
Right.
feel that from the design of, you know, just your web page in itself. And I know there's something about it that just, I think the combination really works really beautifully. It's just wonderful work. Thank you so much for sharing. Really, really. Oh, we have a great question in the chat. Do you know who is your competitor? Ooh, have you done any research as to who could be your competitor, or is anyone else in the field doing this kind of work? Have you seen other people doing this?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of artists that do skateboard art. There's one in particular, her name is Jess Lambert. She's an Australian artist, and she does really beautiful surfboard art. But, you know, I'd have to dive a little deeper into my direct competitors. You know, there's definitely amazing artists out there, but yeah, I would have to do a little more research on that one.
I love it. And the other thing is too, like, even if it is another, even if there are other competitors doing this kind of work, you know, are they doing the same artwork that you're doing on their boards, right? Because if I'm specifically looking for a board and I'm attracted to your artwork, I'm going to want to purchase your artwork versus, you know, because it's a piece of art, it's so personal versus whoever website I go to that's doing this kind of work, I wouldn't, you know, I'm going to look at the piece of art and see which ones I'm attached to and which ones call my name. So
Right.
best of luck with this. Thank you so much
Thank
for sharing.
you.
And we're going to open the space for, let me make sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Is it Kadi?
It's Katie.
Katie? Okay, Katie.
Yes, no
Katie.
worries. Sure thing. Let me share this. All right, I'll move this bar because this is always in the way. There we go. All right, can everyone see that now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Perfect. All right, so let me go ahead and begin. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie, and my thesis project is titled Exploring ASL Hands-On, Innovating ASL Education Through Interaction and Play. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so with my thesis, I aim to innovate ASL education and allow children to discover and interact with American Sign Language in an outdoor setting, in this case, a playground. So this idea came to me after my first semester in college, actually. I was in a word-working class, and I was paired with a girl who was deaf and nonverbal. So to work on our project, it wasn't as simple as just getting together. Her interpreter had to accompany her, which made it more difficult. When her interpreter couldn't make it, I just felt awful for not being able to communicate with her, nor being able to understand her. I just kept remembering and wishing that I had learned some sign language in school. And then I thought back and I couldn't remember if sign language was even offered in my school. So starting this project, I began to ask myself a couple of crucial questions. So one was, how can we innovate the education of American Sign Language? And the other was, how might we make kids want to learn ASL? So upon some initial research, I discovered that sign language is likely to become a dying language as more and more schools are not teaching it due to dwindling funding. Though sign language is still one of the 5 most commonly used languages in the United States. And then actually lastly is I discovered that 65% of humans are visual learners. So this kind of stands out. This finding is what challenged me to want to design a space in which kids can learn outside of school with visuals and interactions, a place that bridges the connection between learning and the action of play. So the main mission of this thesis is, yes, to confront our nation's lack of ASL instruction and education, but also to demonstrate how a child's interaction with design is key in their sensory processing and cognitive development of language. And so I'll zoom in a little further into my playground. This is what I call my hands-on playground. So the designs of this playground involve tactile structures composed of a collection of signs from the ASL alphabet, which have been thoughtfully paired with recognizable symbols. So usually when you see on a playground, there's a typical abundance of kind of linear hollow bars. In this case, the ASL signs will now be made up of these bars on my playground. And with the hopes that this will encourage fun and play and allow kids to kind of move them around, interact, touch these signs, and associate sign language with fun and excitement. So learning ASL will now be a hands-on process of exploration and likely more appealing to the youth. So in conclusion, with my envisioned playground, I aim to provide children with a new and exciting and interactive way to discover ASL, with the hopes that this might inspire future generations of ASL users. And then I think just kind of down here is just kind of a recap. And then kind of moving forward, I am kind of pursuing building models and kind of three-dimensional models to get the feel for what it would be like interacting in this space. And then over here is kind of a couple examples of the signs and symbols kind of paired together for kids to kind of want to play and recognize. So something that they'll be interested in. So yeah.
Questions for you. This is
Right.
just beautiful. What age group are you thinking about specifically designing this for?
Right. I think so. Initially, when we discussed that, because in a lot of my research, it's that, I mean, baby sign language is such a big thing right now, and young early exposure is like so big with signing. But the problem is that once kids are verbal, they kind of abandon the sign language. So kind of the age range that is, I don't know how, to what age is the cap, but ones that can really think for themselves and associate and kind of want to explore sign language more once they do get this grasp, or like remember that they saw these letters on this playground, and with the hopes that this will inspire them to kind of pursue learning more signs and more sign language.
I will tell you that in the education system, I used to be a high school teacher. There aren't enough public schools that teach sign language, and
Right.
there is definitely a need for this. And high school students are interested in this. I did have the fortunate luck to teach in a high school that did have ASL, and those classes would like fill up. I mean,
Right.
she could not teach enough. Like, people were interested in taking this. People are very conscious about American Sign Language and are very interested in taking this.
Right.
Do you see yourself developing this into different languages, so it's not just American Sign Language?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I did kind of start out this whole project with kind of wanting to put a whole bunch of languages in this playground. But for some reason, I kind of just dove into sign language because to me, well, I just thought that sign language is already a visual. It's kind of a movement and action. And so I kind of wanted to concentrate on applying that to like a tangible setting. And so I know that pursuing this in the future, I do, because the movement aspect of sign language is like the main concept, like the physical movements. I want to be able to apply that to structures that can move back and forth, which is kind of what excited me about concentrating on sign language alone, because in other languages, it is kind of more of a written or like a read thing. So yeah, I mean, there's potential for it, but I think the sign language excited me.
And also just
the
to
most.
think about sign language that is not in English too, like that's not the American
Right.
standard
right.
language. To think about
Totally.
that too in the design of this app, because if you're bringing this app to Latin America, right, you have a huge market and how words are different when you sign language.
Mhm.
And so to think also conceptually about the possibilities of in the future as you're moving forward, like how do you pair up with hopefully maybe an organization or someone who can help you translate to the sign language being used in those countries.
Yeah,
I think it would be a really interesting way to look at this.
absolutely.
Do you think there are challenges in trying to teach children ASL outside of this, traditional educational system, like I was saying earlier?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is because in a classroom, you're not having that instruction and repetition and kind of the forced, not so much forced, but it is kind of like you do have the homework and you do have the structure. And now it's kind of like up to you. It's what you associate and what you remember. Um, but I mean, I think it is kind of a new way of repetition. I mean, a playground is a place that you want to go to and you want to play at over and over again, hopefully. And I'm hoping that if you do recognize these things more and more as you see them, you will start to understand and take it for your own and teach yourself. And yeah, I think a playground was exciting to me because I thought back to how I think I learned the most when I was young. And I can't say that I mean, I learned a great deal in school, but I did learn a lot from my experiences and playing and kind of interacting with others. So yeah.
It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I'm again so inspired by all of these projects. So beautiful and moving, and I'm literally sitting here being like, I wonder, like 5 years from now, am I going to be scrolling and seeing these like apps and inspiration of this and these exhibits and places, and I'll be like, I remember when, just really
Right.
beautiful work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's open it up. Does anyone have any questions that y'all would like to ask? Just one, general question that maybe was not covered in this extensive, actually. Any questions? Yes, Matt.
Yeah, I think you kind of asked like maybe a form of this question, but and this may be beyond like the scope of your thesis, but is this a concept that you see extending beyond like children and possibly going into teenagers or adulthood and kind of using that way that we learn like visually and seeing how that can play off it?
Right, yeah, that's a really good question. And I want to say yes, for sure, because I know today, like things like this still do excite me. I mean, I know I'm a big kid, but I do think that we still learn the most from our experiences. And so I am considering kind of taking this into not so much a playground space, but how everything is kind of virtual, kind of maybe putting it kind of on a virtual platform, what that might be, I'm not sure, but yeah, so that other people can associate it with fun. It doesn't have to be just kids. I think everyone wants fun aspects of learning. So yeah, that's a great idea.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to open the space now for Kai. Kai, the space is yours.
Okay. Hi, my name's Kai. I'm a graphic design major and I'm graduating this semester, like everyone else here. So this is my project, the Neue Propaganda. The title translates to the new propaganda. So why did I call this project the new propaganda? It's because in the past, the primary way through which people modified the behavior of populations was through centralized programming. So think television, newspapers, and radio. But today, behavior modification is partly, though not entirely, transferred into the hands of elite, from the hands of elite editors to the power of social media algorithms. So think Twitter, Facebook, Google, and YouTube. These social media algorithms are not strictly speaking worse or better, but they have new ways of affecting how we think. So as a result, we're freer from the control of the elite, centralized editors and writers, but there are also drawbacks to that. So according to experiments published by Facebook in 2012, 2014, and 2017, the content and temperament of your social media feed dictates very heavily how you feel. So if you get negative content in your feed, you'll feel a lot more negative. If you get angrier content in your feed, you'll feel a lot angrier. And what makes this a problem is that social media is optimized to get you as many advertisements as possible, which means they want you to keep as addicted as possible to their platform, which means that they'll show you content that's the most likely to keep you addicted, which usually ends up being negative or angry content. And this, of course, creates a feedback loop that sort of traps you in a feedback loop of outrage. So for this project, I created a web page with many animations, including one longer animation with audio and other smaller ones that derive from it. I also created a custom typeface that you can see being used here called, for example, in the name Shoshana Zubov, called Pravda. I also created a thesis booklet that compiles a lot of information that you might want to know about the social media you use. So these all have sort of the goal of helping raise awareness about how social media algorithms affect you and why you should be wary of them. So yeah, thank you. And if you'd like to browse my site and watch my animations and look at my content, please visit Henthorn-Iwane.com and then click on Neue Propaganda. So yeah.
And please, again, please put your websites in the chat. Please put your website, your handles, so that we can follow you. Because this is really powerful. And so I want to start off with the German. So I'm seeing that there's German in the title. And so I'd love, and I have a feeling I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you. I just, there's so much that I'm, so I'd love for you to go deeper into the aesthetic that you've chosen and this German in the title. I'm just really, really curious. I think I know why, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, so it's sort of so why the Neue Propaganda? It's kind of a spoof on an essay by a German designer, Jan Ticold, called The Neue Typography, or The New Typography. And in the essay, he makes a lot of arguments about what he thinks design should be. So he says, you should only use sans serif typefaces, so stuff like Helvetica, although it wasn't back then. And he made fairly strict guidelines around how all text should be laid out. And kind of the reason why I put that spoof there was because I want to bring to mind the old versus the new. So this, despite having been called the new typography, Jan Ticold's essay is very dated now. And the world that he was writing for, which was ink on paper, is far more digitized. There's far more motion, web, and everything else involved these days. And that is also what applies to the old propaganda versus the new. So I was trying to just bring awareness to that fact that the media that we're consuming is not the same media that we used to. So that was essentially the reason why I picked that title.
And I was thinking about the colors too. The colors really brought me back to some of the German propaganda that I have seen. And so even that, in the strength of the choices of what you've put together. Why did you choose to look? Why did you choose? Why did? Let me see. What are your intentions moving forward with this project? Because the other questions, I think you definitely you've answered them. So what are your intentions? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, so right now, the web page is fairly fleshed out. However, one problem is that it's singularly focused on raising awareness about this issue, but not much in my project is dedicated to what to do about this information. And there's a lot of people who have varying opinions. Some people think that you should delete all of social media. Some people think you should only read the New York Times and get your information from nowhere else. Some people think that we have to demand the government to take action and censor things and these are all very extreme answers. I think there's a lot to consider with how we want to deal with social media, but declaring a moratorium on it is probably not right. There's a lot of really great things that social media and social media news bring to us that we didn't have before. And I think the future for the project would be charting a path for how should we move forward on that. So I think that's.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this past summer when people were watching The Social Dilemma on Netflix, all these people were like, I'm deleting all my social media, I'm deleting everything. And part of me is like, well, did you really learn from, from the documentary, learn about how this data is being collected? What are what are the algorithms? How do you break the algorithms? And I think that that's something that people need to start learning. you know, and also at the end of the day, part of me is like self-control, you know, and I also, when I have discussions with people, I'm often, you know, because I've kept a lot of my social media, and despite seeing these documentaries and everything, but I'm like, well, you know what you're putting in, like, you know what you are posting. You are conscious to know what your content you're putting out there as well, you know, and if you are aware exactly what you're actually telling us, if you're aware of what's coming at us and why it's coming at us, you know, how do we break that and how do we break that cycle? So I can't wait to see the next step into this project and what you're hoping to sort of like continue with it. So I'm really, really excited, and I think it's a great contribution to sort of the discussion that has already sort of started, and so many people, they don't know what to do. They're sort of, those examples that you gave are so real. They're like, either delete everything, how do I find the balance? And I think you're at a space that will allow us to start learning and figuring out how to find that balance if we want to keep it. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this. I'm going to open it up again to everyone in the space. Does anyone have a specific question that y'all would like to ask Kai? Specific question, any specific question? Any question? I think I'm seeing any hands. I'm scrolling through all the names just to make sure. All right, well, Kai, thank you so much. I've really appreciated learning and just seeing, and I'm going to be going to the web page and being like, oh, let me see. I want to see the animations. That's what I feel like I'm missing right now. I want to see the animations. So I'm excited about that. Matt, you are up next. So please, I'd love to, you know, share the space with you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I just want to start off saying thank you to everyone for being here, and thank you to Professor Caroline Kirkpatrick for helping me throughout this, and yeah, and all my peers for giving me feedback throughout the way through. So, so my thesis is a project. This is entitled Model Revolution, and the subtitle is Facilitating the Production of Revolutionary Art and Design. So I'll go ahead and zoom in here a bit so you guys, and then we can scroll throughout. From the beginning, prior to its current state of development, this entire project has centered around modes of enacting specifically socialist revolution in the current political climate of the United States with the assistance of art and design. So we'll go through my thesis here, and I'll break down kind of the individual parts and components and add a little nuance to the ideas that I'm presenting to you today. So I want to first highlight the historical backdrop of the ideology framing my thesis. It would be disingenuous to say that I've created all of the ideas that I'm presenting to you today, but rather I'm building off some of the most profound and relevant ideological explorations into art's role in creating socialist revolution. In my research, I covered a wide range of texts, but the two that I wanted to tell you guys about today are the first one's from the October constructivist group. They were a collective of artists out of the earliest Soviet Union. And then another text entitled Manifesto for an Independent Revolutionary Art. At the end of the day, these texts recognize the power that designers and artists and writers all carry in the context of social perception. It criticizes restrictions put on art during past socialist experiments, namely social realism, and claims that art has its own laws and must find its own course in the context of revolution. My research goes far, far deeper, and if anyone wants to know more, then I'm happy to talk with you after, but we'll move on to the next section. So now I took some of that information and attempted to synthesize that with the material conditions surrounding artists and designers in the United States in the year 2021. And what I've discovered is that now more than ever, designers and artists really wield a unique power today in kind of the national political discourse. Now anyone can log on to Canva or open Photoshop and create a poster and have their printer spin out 100 copies, or they could post it on social media. So with that great accessibility, I argue comes great responsibility, and that those who are interested in designing messages meant to enact and organize and revolutionize society, they must engage with this cycle that I call the economy of revolutionary art, which is essentially a feedback loop. And it's part of the main theoretical component of my greater product for this thesis, which is a kind of a manifesto on the production of revolutionary art. So there are four main components. We're going to begin at iteration and social investigation, which really just means talking to real people, finding out the conditions and problems that they're facing with relevance to social or economic struggles. And once you've gathered that information, you can move on to producing art and design, whether privately or through publications and organizations that either bring attention to or engage in a call to action or organization to address those issues. From there, you can move on to distribution, which arguably out of each of these steps has changed the most over the last few decades. We have incredibly quick and efficient ways of communicating with a large number of people through the power of the internet and social media. And then from there, you have mass consumption, where the masses of people engage with your art and either engage with it positively or negatively. And it is your job as an artist and designer to go among the masses and conduct social investigation about your work, to talk with people and better find out about how you can use your skills as a revolutionary artist or designer to assist in the struggle for economic, social, and material liberation. Really what this is about practice and the role that we as artists and designers play, which is a fairly significant role in the development of art and culture under the banner of revolutionary socialism. So if you want to keep up with my, I know that was like a little bit, we had to gloss over some part, but if you want to keep up with my work, my thesis or my website will be updated with some of the work from this thesis and the eventual outcomes. So I'll throw that in the chat once we're done. And then with that, I wanted to end with a quote from the Manifesto for an Independent Revolutionary Art, which says, "Independent revolutionary art must now gather its forces for the struggle against reactionary persecution. It must proclaim aloud its right to exist." Yeah, thank you.
So Matt, these remind me of zines. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, Z-I-N-E.
Yeah, zines, yeah.
There we go. And so
Yeah.
it reminds me so much. I have a former student of mine who created a whole, she created a magazine based on zines. And I'd love to know, is there a parallel? Did you take inspiration? Because there's just so many similarities in what I'm seeing and what I've seen of them. And I was introduced to them through my students. And so it's still new to me, although they're not new, of course. But I'd love to know if there's a parallel, if there's inspiration. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first started creating our theses, Professor Kirkpatrick had us kind of explore the idea of putting our ideas into like a book form, a publication form. And I think that I always kind of approached those exercises as kind of with the mentality of creating a zine. So absolutely, there were certain elements of that creation process that I kind of eventually incorporated into my overall design process for this. But yeah, the creation of zines and the kind of aesthetic that comes from them, I think is really important. And especially it kind of plays into my choice to use like collage for my project, which really kind of speaks to different things. I originally got into collage around the time of the protests last summer because I really liked kind of the rapid nature that you could develop ideas with collage. You know, you're using pre-existing images from like newspapers or magazines or what have you, and then you're altering them and changing them and appropriating them to communicate whatever message it is. So I think as time went on, I began to really kind of think of how like this medium could like bring some commentary or some real meaning aside from kind of like, you know, it looks fun, it looks cool. But it also kind of represents like two main things to me. So the first is kind of the foundations that I'm building, that I like built upon my thesis, kind of taking the theoretical components of past thinkers and then synthesizing it with the conditions here and today. And so, yeah, I'm also kind of taking and appropriating and generating new compositions to communicate the ideas. But the second thing that collage kind of represents to me is the accessibility. So because we're talking about working with pre-existing images and aside from like scissors, tape, glue, paper. Those are all really the tools that you need to begin making powerful and meaningful compositions, which I think speaks beautifully to the deeper kind of ideological themes of socialism, and such as the collective ownership of the means of production. Artists and designers, and really most people, already own those means of production. They own the materials to create these compositions. So I think that as time went on, like the process of creating zines and using this mode of collage really kind of began to inform the ideological component of my thesis. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Given this means of production, what are your next steps?
Yeah, my next steps, this is definitely, I plan on turning this into some sort of a publication or book or something along those lines that really will attempt to serve as a first step in the direction towards addressing the question of how can we utilize our skills as artists and designers, and really just visual communicators as a whole, to create rapid and really revolutionary change, and how those skills can kind of assist with the greater kind of process of organization. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd love to open it up to everyone. And if there is a question from everyone in the space and in the room that you would like to ask Matt. Does anyone have a question that Matt might not have covered, that you might be curious about? Trying to see, making sure, scrolling through everyone's pictures. Don't see any questions. All right, thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing your work. Kai, were you gonna ask a question? No? All right. We're going to move to 2 more presentations, and the next one is Nina. Nina, I can't wait to hear your presentation. Space is yours.
Hi, thank you. Alrighty. So my name is Nina Casillas. I'm the designer behind Find Me at the Crossroads, and I chose to focus on intersectionality for this project because growing up in a small town in Arizona, where I didn't really feel connected to my Mexican heritage, or while also learning how to exist as a woman in this world, and then at the same time coming to terms with being bisexual, it was kind of like the little missing puzzle piece that I needed to learn to appreciate those different parts of myself and kind of reclaim them. So with this project, I really wanted to educate and encourage people to take a look at their own identities and how it impacts their approach to life, and specifically art. The technical definition of intersectionality, let's see if I can zoom in here. Let me full screen this. The technical definition is, it's a noun, and it's the enmeshed nature of social categorization such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. So it's very much rooted in political theory, and it was first coined in 1989 by Kimberly Crenshaw, and she used it to describe a Black woman's oppression and what they face. But now it's become kind of an essential prefix to feminism. And I believe that it is a key consideration in how we're going to be progressing as a society. To highlight intersectionality in art, I interviewed a couple fellow students and I sent out a survey, and the quotes that you see on this poster are some perspectives on how intersectionality is important, how important it is to consider identity in art and in life. And then in addition, I created this, what I call the identity cycle. It's basically an oversimplified map of how I would characterize the typical experience of standing out according to a Western society standards. Because first up, we have creation. From birth, people of color typically experience more discrimination in hospitals, and that goes more over for, poor babies or chubby babies. Anything that's short of a Gerber baby is sometimes going to face some discrimination in hospitals. And then it moves to exploration. elementary school is probably like the first time that people experience significant influence outside of family. And that influence can sort of be a kind of indoctrination through the years, between wanting to fit in, or, you know, coming to this belief that you're only going to be successful if you fit a certain mold. It can kind of lead to this disorientation as you grow older and become an adult. And like, of course, I want to mention the keystone of the cycle is that these are not choices that we make, they're choices that are put on us by society. So like, you know, Black women being told their hair is not professional and being forced to straighten it, that's not a choice they're making. That's a choice, that's a sacrifice that they're making to fit into the society better. And then my hope in considering intersectionality is that we all eventually reach reclamation. And we can, you know, overcome all of these little steps, and no longer like succumb to the societal pressure. But again, this is really on a macro or micro level of an individual person. And it's gonna just cycle back through the generations unless we can really start to focus on making change on the macro level. But yeah, so my project lives on my website, which I'll also post in the chat. But yeah, that's basically it. I just hope that I can encourage everyone to take a look at their own experiences and consider their own crossroads of identity for all walks of life.
Yes, 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 yes. So Nina, my question to you is like, how do you think graphic design, you know, how do you think it's essential to creating awareness, especially for intersectionality? I actually just taught a class on intersectionality with my students, my grad students on Tuesday, and I use icons on a consistent basis, but I'd love to hear from you. I'm like, oh, I could have used this icon and been like, this is created by a student here at LMU. But I'd love to hear from you. Like, how do these icons create awareness, especially with this topic?
I think it just makes it easier. It makes it more digestible. You know, it's simple. It's 5 words, it's 5 symbols, and you can kind of put your own meaning to that, I guess. And you can, you know, change up the symbols as you need. This doesn't need to be someone's hair being straightened. It can be something that represents being discouraged from learning maybe your home language, or using a lighter foundation so that you fit in. And so I just think graphic design can be transformative, and it can, you know, mold to any different type of person that needs to feel represented and needs to be represented based on who they are.
Yes, yes, I'm loving this. How do you plan on expanding this project? Like, what are these like next steps that you're seeing?
Like I said, you know, using different iconography, I would love to create like a campaign, maybe on social media, maybe some posters, something like that, so people can really start to recognize, like, am I experiencing this pressure? Am I succumbing to this pressure? Or am I truly acting in a way that is of my own volition? Am I being true to myself? Am I being true to my identity? Or am I letting other people tell me who I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to be successful?
Yes, I want to see these. Absolutely. Please do. Please create these. I want to see them on social media, and I will repost them. I was going to ask you, what is the significance of the look that you chose for this project? You know, especially I'm seeing the intersectionality of the colors, right? But I'm really interested as why, and I see how you carried it throughout with these shadows. But I would love to hear from you. Why, and what is the significance?
Yeah. So obviously I went with the CMYK model, and I'm just very fascinated by color. The fact that, like, when you're printing something, you get these little ink cartridges, you have, you know, 3 colors and black, and you can create like this amazing picture that is so much more than what originally, you know, it was. And to me, that's kind of what people are like. You know, yeah, I am Mexican, I am a woman, I am bisexual, but I'm me. You know, those things define me, but they aren't fully me. They influence me, and they make me feel confident and proud of myself. But at the end of the day, they are creating a larger picture, and that larger picture is me as a designer, as a person, as a friend. you know, as someone who's going through life.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I'm noticing you have Meet Me at the Crossroads and then Find Me at the Crossroads. So is there a difference between Meet Me at the Crossroads and Find Me?
No, I mean, not really. Like, Meet Me is the intersection of, you know, when we're all going to come together, and Find Me is that step of reclaiming.
All right, I love that. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. I'd love to open it up to anyone in the space in case you would like to ask a question. Anyone? Just opening it up just in case, although you did cover a lot. No questions. All right, we're about to step into our last presentation, y'all, of the evening. Thank you so much for staying here and supporting one another and sharing each other's work. And I've recorded all of these, and so it'll live on. It won't be just a space that occurred in here. We'll get to share this with others. And if you know someone who didn't get to see this work, they'll be able to see it once it's posted on our website. But let's move to our last presenter, and that's Sara. Sara.
Hi, thank you so
Hello.
much.
Thank you for your patience, Sara.
Of course. I know everyone's getting hungry, so I'll try to be quick. Yeah, so my thesis is called More Than Meets the Eyes. Let me zoom in here. So it's an exploration of Korean American identity through the design of a traditional Korean garment called the hyungbae. The hyungbae is an embroidered chest piece that was worn by the elite male government officials of Korea to symbolize their status in society during the Joseon dynasty, which I've sort of illustrated in this icon here. My goal was to take this piece of Korea's history and fuse it with something that relates to our society and generation. So I chose to place my designs on sweatshirts because it's a versatile piece of clothing that everybody owns and is not restricted to any gender, age, wealth, or race. The design that I created consists of the US national mammal, the bison, and the Korean national animal, the Siberian tiger. The duality of the design serves as a symbol to represent the push and the pull of one's identity and negate the idea of society trying to place us on the inside or outside of a box. For this reason, I've included decorative elements in the background of the design, such as clouds, water, plants. These are all items that are universally found throughout the world to emphasize the importance of commonality and equality. So if I scroll down here, by showcasing my designs on the sweatshirts, still posing as a chest piece, rather than representing status, it symbolizes my take on Korean American identity and the pride I've discovered in both my nationality and ethnicity, and how the two can work cohesively to create an identity that is not this or that. When I was younger, I didn't really have much of an appreciation for being Korean, and I actually resented being seen as different or categorized as an outsider or an other. So I learned how to speak English and assimilate to American culture as quickly as possible. But since then, I've cultivated my love for the language and Korean culture, and this project has rocketed me into learning about Korean history and design. It has been devastating to read about the anti-Asian crimes that have been happening in the United States. So for me, this project has quickly morphed into a vehicle of activism and justice, as well as an exploration of Korean American identity. So going back up to the icons, the idea of immigrating and assimilating in America is usually described as the melting pot. This term has been used to embody the cultural phenomenon that happens when immigrants come to the States. However, this suggests the erasure of different cultures and backgrounds and supports the idea of homogenization, which is an issue Asian Americans already face. So instead, by using the term a quilt of diversity, it promotes the acceptance and addition of different backgrounds to the fabric of society. So my intention for this project is to start this discussion of terminology and create a tangible and wearable piece of this quilt of diversity. And if you would like to join this discussion and spread the message through these wearable narratives, please feel free through Instagram or email, which is down below. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you so much. as I'm watching this, I have 3 different girlfriends of mine who are Korean adoptees. So they were adopted and brought to this country. And in their adulthood, they really dove into discovering the Korean background because they were adopted by white families. And so I think that even this in the form of, there's a whole movement of young Koreans who have been adopted and brought to this country, who are reclaiming, going back to the terminology some of you were using earlier, and really re-looking at their roots and heritage. And what a beautiful way also of like merging this with activism, as well as like a reclaiming of roots and learning of history. Just really, really beautiful. And it just made me think of my friends, and I'm like, oh, they would love this. I need to send this to them. So this is really beautiful and impactful. I'm really curious, did you design also the clothing? Because I'm noticing this is not your standard sweatshirt. And but even as you were speaking about quilting, right? I'm looking at the sweatshirt and I'm looking at how it's the sleeve is like weaved to, sort of like quilted together, but not quilted together. And so I'm really
Yes.
curious.
I didn't design the sweatshirts themselves, but I actually love the part that is the sleeve is almost disconnected from the rest of the body. And I actually want to further that idea and almost put mismatching fabrics together to create this assembled quilt and further that idea of different pieces creating the fabric of society. So
Have you thought about also going into design? I mean, you are already, with what you're saying, you're already going into the design of the clothing themselves. So are you thinking about furthering that as well? Not just placing your art on it, but also designing what it's going to look like.
totally. I wish I had more time to create my own clothing pieces. I've actually talked to Professor Dobson about sort of pushing the boundaries of what it means to be wearing clothes, because in my opinion, these are not just cute sweatshirts that are marketed for a certain demographic. Like, these are pieces of your identity that you wear around. It's like a second skin. You can wear, it's like wearing like a book cover, almost, like not judging a book by its cover. And so almost these sweatshirts tell your story, your narrative, before people have the chance to judge you or I don't know, categorize you with different stereotypes. So yeah, I definitely want to play around with the illusion of even wearing clothes, sort of pushing that boundary and seeing what it means to design clothing, I guess.
Yeah, just I love it because I feel like this is like the extension of what this project could be, where it's going besides the artwork that you're designing. And you're right. There's so much about fashion that is a statement of itself. And let's say that let's say if I encountered someone wearing your clothing and I didn't know what it was, it could also engage in this whole conversation and discourse about family and heritage and like, and all these things. So it's not like, oh, I just got a sweatshirt. No, there's meaning behind it. I am curious though, given the cultural specific nature of your project, do you envision your concept also to be applied to wider audiences? Do you want to just focus on Korean culture? Just out of curiosity.
Of course. I absolutely want to branch out to different cultures, different ethnicities. I wouldn't feel comfortable being the one designing designs for these other cultures. I would definitely collaborate with somebody and get their voice, their opinion, their story into these designs, because this design that I created has my personal sort of heart, my identity. So I feel like giving that opportunity to another artist to sort of showcase their story would be an amazing opportunity.
Collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. Absolutely. Sarah, these are beautiful. Thank you
Thank you so
so
much.
much. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And again, I'd love to open it up. Does anyone have a final question that they would like to ask Sarah? Anyone in the space have a final question as we're closing up? No final questions? Well, I'm gonna give the little clap, clap icon. Everyone, thank you so much for being in the space. Like, seriously, thank you so much for sharing your work. I am so inspired. I know that I'm coming from a different discipline, which is theater, but I'm just sitting here being incredibly inspired by your work and really moved. And I was telling your professor, I was just really just really moved. and I didn't know what to expect coming into space. I didn't look at I like to be surprised. I didn't look at anything last night, and I did see the titles of all your pieces, right? But I'm like, I want to see what they look like, and then I want to see their explanations. And I'm just sitting here so inspired and really moved. I just really am. I don't even know how to explain it, but I'm just like, yeah, I think our future is going to be okay, y'all. And I often say this as an educator to people. I'm like, yeah, our future's going to be okay. Like our students are innovative, and they think about the environment, and they think about intersectionality, and they think about identity, and they're looking at the world very differently. And so y'all inspired me today. So thank you so much. Again, thank you all for being in the space. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Go get your dinner, y'all. And thank you again so much for being here. Thank you, 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 thank you.